Welcome to Towel Capes. I'm Cody Nestor. He's Todd Heel.
What's up, guys?
And today we're here to talk about one of our all-time favorites, Batman '89.
Yeah.
This month marks the film's 35th anniversary. Released on June 23rd, 1989, Batman '89 was a true blockbuster. On a production budget of $48 million, it made $411 million worldwide. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about $1 billion today. Years after Batman's campy days on TV, here was finally a project that took the source material seriously and brought to life a darker Batman meant for a more mature audience. So, Todd, I wasn't alive when this film came out, unfortunately. What was it like in 1989 when this film came out?
Man, I tell you, first off, it was released on June the 23rd, so happy birthday to me.
Yeah.
My birthday was the very next day, June the 24th.
I mean, this was the 80s. I'm assuming you were doing a lot of coke at the time.
Well, I could have potentially been, but I didn't.
Okay. Good for you, Todd.
But this hit like the summer of what was going to be my senior year in high school. And this is one of the first times I ever remember being, especially being old enough to remember something like this just becoming like a total like pop culture phenomenon. I mean, like the marketing for this movie, even with like no internet back in the day, was just through the roof. I mean, that one sheet, Bat Signal poster was everywhere. And it was like, hype on like shows like Entertainment Tonight. And this was back in the day when like actors or actresses would go on like talk shows and have to take like a clip from the movie to promote the movie. And it was hype. It was hype through the roof. But the thing of it is you can have hype through the roof, but then if the movie lays a turd,
Right.
yikes. But this movie did not lay a turd.
It
was a blockbuster in all senses of the word. It was a great film, and it was just like everywhere you looked, it was Batman. Batman on underwear, Batman on toilet paper, Batman T-shirts, Batman this, Batman that. If you were a Batman fan like I was since I was growing up, oldest memories I have is of Batman '66. So I was in heaven.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were. I think a lot of people at that time were like, they were so much, they were reading the comics of Frank Miller and the dark takes that were Batman in the comics for a few years. They had taken that darker turn. It was a more of a mature book for mature audiences, and like people were like had this great desire to see that depicted on screen because before that Batman was, like you said, the Batman on screen was Batman '66, which it's its own thing and it's good in its own way, but again that's the very campy side of Batman.
Yeah.
And even though this was released in '89, this was like, right at the tail end of the '80s. It was like the big blockbuster of the '80s, like where you had like the '70s, you had, Jaws in '75, that was like huge.
Yep.
Then you had Star Wars in '77, which was even bigger.
Right.
But this was like the blockbuster of the '80s.
Yeah.
Like this was like the hit. And we were just talking before, like I think you said you read something about like the length that this was in cinemas.
Yeah, it was like you said, came out June the 23rd, '89, and I read that it left the cinemas like December 18th of that year.
Yeah.
So you think about a big ass long theatrical run.
Yeah, like when people like just people multiple like viewings of it, people just couldn't get enough of it. And like again, this is back in the days, like for it to come to home video, you were talking maybe 9 months later to a year before it hit home video. Like there wasn't no like let's put it out today and then 2 weeks it'll be on streaming and like cut our box office in half. Like it was appointment viewing. You had to leave your house to go see it. If you wanted to be part of this pop culture phenomenon, you had to go see it in the theaters, and it had its long run, like something like Titanic. I mentioned that before we started the podcast. I think it was in the theaters for like a year. Like it was one of those just like juggernaut films.
And like that home video release, it was like almost equivalent to like the movie release, because when it came out on VHS, it was like people were lining up at midnight just to get into stores to buy that thing.
Imagine.
It was crazy.
Imagine. If you're watching this, and you're probably pretty familiar with the film story, so we won't focus on too much on that for now. So let's talk about cast first. So let's starting with our second Build star, Michael Keaton.
Okay.
Known mostly as a comedic actor at the time, famously his casting as Batman prompted around 50,000 hate mail letters to be sent to Warner Brothers at the time. Todd, 35 years later, what are your thoughts on Michael Keaton's performance as Batman and Bruce Wayne?
In my opinion, I think Michael Keaton is one of the best ones to ever do it. I mean, he's definitely right up there near the top of my list. I think, boy, you think about if the internet had existed back when he was cast. You talk about breaking the internet.
Yeah, like, and then you think about it, like, I mean, 50,000 pieces. I mean, like, and again, that's a process.
That's snail
you
mail
get out
coming
the
in.
stationery. You got to put your thoughts down on paper with a pen or pencil or some type of big crayon.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you got to physically mail it. Like, just to think about the effort, like the visceral, like, reaction to his casting, like, it's kind of crazy to go back and think about, like, especially from my perspective, like you said, with no internet, like, to like really be that viscerally against it. And I mean, like, I get it from some standpoints because, again, like, he's not the biggest guy. He wasn't this.
Right.
He wasn't like the big '80s action heroes. He
Average build guy.
Yeah, he was an average build, average height, and he was mostly known as a comedic actor. And like, he had a dramatic turn in a film, or two, like, right before this came out. But like, yeah, I think it was like a gamble. Like, I think it really was a gamble.
It was. We think about it at the time. It was probably the biggest, maybe, casting gamble, maybe ever.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, and this was this was a big budget picture for the '80s. I mean, of course, but like, I think it's kind of like when I think about Keaton, I think he's like the Sean Connery of the Batman series. Now it's like he's the first one to do it,
Right.
And I think a lot of people. He's the first, and a lot of people still consider the best.
Right.
Like, arguably, like, I wouldn't put him at my top anymore. Like, I have another performance that I enjoy, but I think he's top. He's 2 or maybe 3.
Right. Yeah.
At lowest, he goes to 3.
Yeah.
And I don't even think he's 3. He's probably 2 in my
Gotcha.
opinion. But like, yeah, it was a huge gamble, and I mean, I think. And we'll talk about it kind of as we get here. I think it's more his Batman that shines than his Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Just based on the story that's
fair. That's true.
That's kind of told here. So after all these years later, we've had many different on-screen versions of Batman in the bat suit. So taking that into consideration, how do you view Keaton's bat suit today?
Looking at it today, you can definitely see its limitations. The boots were basically built up Nikes.
Yeah. Yep.
And definitely the restrictions with the cowl. He basically couldn't look side to side. He had to basically go up and down.
No neck mobility
No
whatsoever.
neck mobility whatsoever. Most of the stuff he did, I noticed, were a lot of kicks. There were a few punches, but there were a lot of kicks. So you can definitely see the limitations of it. But I think for the look of it, I think it's still iconic. I think it still works in the concept of what they did here. You're basically going with what you got to work with. And I think they did a good job of building this suit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I still think it's, like, iconic. I still think a lot of people, like, again, prefer Keaton, and I think a lot of people still prefer that era of Batman suits, like, especially the early suits, like, this one and Returns. Like, yeah, it's not perfect at all. Like, if in some shots you can clearly see, like, the material is a little, like, it's almost like it's, like, kind of, I don't know what you would call it. It's like it's almost like it's like a magnet for like fingerprints or something,
right?
Or like sticky-ish looking. It's like it's not the best, but like it's still kind of classic. It's still iconic, and like, do you prefer that suit or the Return suit? A lot of people feel like that's the evolution of the suit, like the suit kind of perfected in a way.
I do really like the Return suit. I think if you put me on the spot, I think I may like Return suit a little bit better.
Yeah, like you kind of in the Return suit, you get the more like, I don't know, it's like kind of almost like Art Deco-y, like abs and like this, you get the real like muscle suit. And like, what did you think about the change to the bat with like adding the extra little
I've always wondered about that because this was a Warner Brothers movie and Warner Brothers owned Batman.
And it had to be just somebody decided to do it, or
and the poster had the legit, just the 1 point.
Right.
Even at the beginning of the movie, when they show the symbol, it's the 1 point.
Right.
So it just, I don't know.
They're like, hey, Tim, we fucked up, man. We put the wrong
Somebody
bats.
put 2 on the side.
Yeah, it's mounted in the suit already. It's going to cost about $35,000 to fix it. And it's like, yeah, just leave it.
I'm sure there's the legit story why they did that, but it's just always seemed a little funny to me. But it kind of, it automatically makes you identify that symbol with this movie. Yeah. When you see that suit, that's Batman '89 because it's got those 2 extra little bat tips at the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I think Keaton kind of took like a negative with not being able to kind of move his head and kind of turned it into a positive. Like just like kind of the physicality of those movements. It's almost like I think it adds more to his performance as Batman than it detracts. Like compared to some of the others that's had to deal with the same thing that didn't
Right.
kind of bring the same level of movements to it. And like
Yeah.
there's kind of almost like a I don't know if it's like an intimidation factor to it, but it's like it's like you have when you make a movement, like you have to commit to whatever you're doing. There's no like wasted
Yeah.
moment of it. Like you have to like commit to it. And I think like he brings a certain like presence to that. And like, again, I think it actually kind of works in a way for this film that maybe it doesn't in others, but like I think in this film it like just definitely kind of works that you
Yeah.
have to like whatever you're doing, you have to commit to doing it. If
Yeah.
you're looking left, you got to really commit to looking left. You
Right.
know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
it kind of adds something to me. Like I actually think I think the physicality of it actually adds something. So every hero needs a villain, of course, Todd.
Yes.
And here we get that in the form of Jack Nicholson's Joker. Before this version of the Joker, there was only the Cesar Romero's mustached clown prince of crime. Since '89, we've had quite a few iterations of the Joker. How does Nicholson's Joker hold up all these years later?
For me, it's my number two. It's always going to. I think for right now, currently, it's still my number two Joker performance. I think to compare it to what I think is my number one. Obviously, I think a lot of people's number one is Heath Ledger. It's almost like an apples to oranges kind of thing. Ledger's is so far different than what Nicholson did here. Right. I think Nicholson, you still get more of like the clown prince of crime type Joker. He's definitely more of the theatrical, but you still got those tinges of malice and menace and being, just a straight up killer. Mm-hmm. Especially that scene where he fries that guy with a hand buzzer and he has like dialogue with a rotting, melting corpse.
Right, right.
It's definitely Nicholson. With that extra slice of ham. He's definitely Jack Nicholson doing the Joker, and it worked for me then, and it still works for me now. I think it's still a great performance.
Yeah, I think that was one of the notes I had. Like, I think it's a good performance, but like you're never not aware that it's Jack on screen.
Right.
Like I think he plays the character of the Joker, but never becomes it like Heath Ledger. Like I think that's the difference. Like he plays the Joker and he does well with it and puts his take on it, but I don't think he ever became the Joker.
Yeah, it's definitely Jack Nicholson's Joker. It's not the Joker.
Yeah, exactly. I think though his casting definitely, I think, legitimized this film in a lot of ways.
Definitely,
because they're like, oh, you got Nicholson. Like that
people kind of perked up.
Yeah,
you got Jack to sign on?
Yeah, exactly. Like it gave that legitimacy to it, to like it's such a big star, a multiple Academy Award winner. Like if he's involved, all right. If he signed on, it might be something to this.
Yeah.
And then there's a famous story too that Robin Williams was offered the role of the Joker when Jack Nicholson kind of hesitated. Had he accepted the role when producers approached Nicholson again and told him Williams would take the part if he did not, Nicholson took the role. Williams was released. Williams resented being used as bait, not only refused to play Riddler in Batman Forever, but also refused to be involved in any Warner Brothers productions until the studio apologized.
Yeah.
So, they kind of used Robin as bait to get Jack to sign on. And, like, if you don't listen, Jack, if you're out, Robin's in. So that kind of thing.
Right.
There's kind of a few other pieces of notes that I kind of just went through the kind of the trivia behind this film. Jack Nicholson said of his role in this film, he said, "The thing that I like about the Joker is that his sense of humor is completely tasteless." He later said the Joker was one of his favorite roles he played.
Nice.
Jack Nicholson admitted in an interview that he was an enormous comic book fan in the era where Batman first appeared, and that the Joker was his favorite character from the comics as well. Jack also received a percentage of the gross on this film, and due to its massive box office take, he took home around $60 million.
Damn.
Adjusted for inflation back in 2022, that would have been about $143 million today.
Nice.
He made the right decision.
Nice contract negotiations there, Jack.
Taking the back end out of this film was definitely the way to go. But definitely legitimize it. I think it's one of those another kind of iconic performances. Like is it in Jack's long career his best performance? No, but like I think it still serves this version of the Joker and this version of Batman pretty well.
Yep.
Even all these years later. I can't talk about the Joker without talking about the prosthetic and the makeup design. What do you think about the makeup design for this version of the Joker?
I actually like it. I still think it works. I think it still holds up. It's based around part of the story where Batman kind of deflects a shot from Jack Napier. It ricochets, hits him in the face. Jack winds up after he falls in the vat going to like a back alley surgeon.
You see the tools I have to work
right.
with.
So he's kind of his face is kind of worked into a perpetual smile.
Right.
I guess in the comics it was more that it was kind of drawn into that smile by the chemicals. So I guess this was kind of more of making it maybe more plausible that something like this maybe wouldn't happen with chemicals, but if a guy gets shot in the face, has some back alley surgery,
right,
the guy ain't got the proper tools, this is what you get. But I think the look of it, I think it still works.
Yeah, it definitely has a little bit in some shots when he plays it more menacingly, and that's I think something that I would have like. I think they felt like the Joker, he has to have this like comedic edge to him too, but like I really wish they would have leaned more into the sinister with this version of Jack's Joker.
Right.
Because I think some of the scenes where he is just Jack, like, and he's like, he is more sinister and creepy, like, at some points, I think that works even better.
Right.
I would have liked to seen him, like, lean more into, like, the sinister and, like, that never quite knowing what he's thinking kind of thing. And, and leave some of the comedic stuff out. But again, that's just a nitpick. But I think again, for this version and the world that Burton created, I think the makeup is sufficient. And like, I was, kind of thinking about too, like you said, it's like, it's almost like when he gets hit with the ricocheted bullet, it's like, it's almost like I think it's supposed to be like meant like it almost like passed through both cheeks almost, you know what I mean? Like it kind of went through his whole face and like you take that, like it adds up. And I think the makeup, works well. And there's the famous, scene where he's got his skin is bleached white, but then he puts on his flesh tone makeup and then he wipes it off. And like, there's like a famous, like there's some great behind the scenes stuff from this movie. If you've never seen it, but like, tell the story of like, it was a bitch to try to figure out how to like actually pull that off. I think it was like some specific type of makeup. And then like he rubbed it off with like isopropyl alcohol and it's a good effect, and it's like, I can't remember too. I know there's a part of like some of the behind the scenes where they talk about that purple splotch on his neck.
Oh,
remember,
I remember seeing that, yeah.
When you first see him. I can't remember exactly what caused that, but there's like a purple splotch on his neck. I don't know if like some of the clothes, like some of the makeup took like some of the dye from his clothing or something like that. I can't remember. But like overall, I think it's a pretty solid performance and pretty solid makeup design for the Joker and everybody in the film, really. Besides Nicholson's Joker and Keaton's Batman, we also get Kim Basinger's Vicky Vale. What do you think of Basinger's performance in the film, Todd?
I think she does a pretty good job here. This is back when Kim Basinger was like one of the big Hollywood actresses at the time, so this is kind of obvious. I think, I had read actually Sean Young was cast, and she actually was filming a scene on horseback, broke her leg. So, hey, Kim, can you come?
Can you help? Can you bail us out?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think she does a good job here. I think her and Keaton really look good together. They play off each other well. It's always kind of weird to me that, at the end, they kind of come together as a couple, or seemingly are coming together as a couple when, she drives off in the, little, with Alfred in the car and like, Master Wayne's going to be late. I'm not a bit surprised. And we never see Vicky again.
She would be written out of the next film with one little line. Yeah, basically. Also, I think I read too, Michelle Pfeiffer, she was dating Michael Keaton at the time.
Yeah, she was up for it.
I think producers were like, hey, we can get Michelle. And Michael was like, nah.
That's too getting too close to home.
Yeah, I don't shit where I eat, fellas. You know what I mean? So can we leave her out of this? But yeah, I think going back on it, I mean, like, if you look at the series as a whole in terms of all Batman on film, like, is there a stronger female performance in any of these Batman films? Like, I'm not saying she's like winning an Oscar for this, but like, is there a stronger, like, maybe Zoe Kravitz, maybe like she gets more to do in the Batman, but like of Bruce Wayne love interest on film in the Batman series, is there a stronger performance than hers?
I mean, it's got to be up there.
I mean, you have Katie Holmes in Batman Begins. You trade her out for Maggie Gyllenhaal in The Dark Knight.
Right.
People have feelings about both. Like, I never thought that, for those films, I never thought they were like
I guess it kind of depends on how you look at Michelle Pfeiffer in Returns. Is she a love
That's
interest?
true.
Is she the villain?
That's true. I didn't really think about her, but
Yeah.
she is kind of both. Really, she's set
Yeah.
up as a love interest a little bit. So yeah,
I can easily put her at my top and just slide Vicky right there in number 2.
That's
I think.
fair. I would say that's fair. Yeah, I wasn't looking at her from that perspective, but you're right, because she is kind of like a love interest as well. Like, they have their scenes together with that. But I think, again, I think it's pretty strong. Like, again, she's not winning an Oscar for this, and she doesn't have a lot to do, but,
Right.
She sets up. She's a capable photographer, and, she's got her little portfolio, and
Yeah.
she gets some good scenes with the next person we're going to talk about, which is Robert Wuhl's Alexander Knox.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the character of Knox and Wuhl's performance, Todd?
I like Knox in this movie, and I like what Robert Wuhl does with it here. I think he's kind of one of those kind of lighter moment type characters. He's kind of your comic relief in a little bit of a way.
Yeah.
He's like your reporter running around trying to convince everybody, hey, there's a 6-foot bat up there on the rooftops. And everybody thinks he's a fucking kook.
Exactly. Yeah. There's giving him a little drawing signed by Bob Kane,
right?
That kind of thing. Yeah.
But I think he does really good in this role. He's not something that detracts from the main story. He's not like, oh my God, there's another Wuhl scene. Yeah. Anytime he's on screen, I enjoy his presence.
Yeah, he's there just enough to not overstay his welcome, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, trying to think of another film I've really ever seen Robert Wuhl in. Maybe Bull Durham.
I was going to say Bull
That's
Durham.
about the only other thing I've ever really seen Robert Wuhl in. I think he does a good job here with the character. Like, it does give you a little bit of levity. It does give you a way into the behind the scenes that he connects Vicky with Bruce through his pursuit of finding out Batman.
Yeah.
She's obviously come to Gotham because she's interested in trying to get that photo of this elusive Batman, the 6-foot bat in Gotham. But yeah, I think it's pretty solid. Rounding out the rest of the cast, we have Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon. I think a fine actor, but for me, never really ticked the box for Gordon. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree. Pat Hingle for years has been like a fine character actor. Maybe a secondary actor in Hollywood. But as far as his Gordon, he's not really given a lot to do.
Yeah.
You really don't even get a lot of scenes with him with Batman together. So
No.
and that's a must with Gordon and
Do
Batman.
you have any in this film? Where he's directly conversing with Batman? No.
No, the only thing I can think of is in Returns where he's looks like the Red Triangle Gang's back or something.
Right.
He's like, we'll see.
Yeah.
Something like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, Pat Hingle, fine actor. He's just, and he does good with what he's given to work with here, but I don't think he's at the top of the heap as far as Commissioner Gordon's go.
I would agree. We also get Jack Palance, however
man.
you say it, plays boss Carl Grissom. Very, very interesting actor, I would say. Kind of a little bit of a fave of mine when I see him. Mostly, other than this, I just always enjoyed him in City Slickers 1 and City Slickers 2 as Curly, and then Curly's brother after Curly dies, who looks exactly like Curly. Todd, are you a Jack Palance a guy? Todd?
I do love him in this role, and I love exactly I love his cadence in this movie, the way he speaks, those lines. There's even, I think, a part over in the movie where Jack Nicholson's Joker makes fun of that. Where he's like, Bob, you're a number one guy.
Apparently improvised by Jack on the day, apparently, too, yeah. Again, it's a small role.
Yeah,
you don't
blink and you miss it type role.
Yeah, but he's there. It sets up, his betrayal of Jack because Jack's been sleeping with his girl Alicia. You know, that great scene where he comes in, he's like, "You set me up over a woman? Are you insane?" That kind of stuff. But yeah, again, small role, but I think an interesting choice, definitely an interesting choice to bring in such a kind of a strong character actor, and I think it adds. Again, with his kind of style and, like you said, that cadence, it adds something of interest to it that you wouldn't get if you just hired anybody that looks like a random mob boss.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
definitely.
You get a little bit more interest.
It brings a little bit more to it.
Billy D. Williams, he's here, Todd. He, again, doesn't have much to do either. He's just here. He's playing Harvey Dent, but he's really just Billy D. Williams, I think.
Right.
He's just on screen a lot, smoking a cigar. We both love Billy D. Williams, I know. But what did you ever really outside of this film, what do you think of his performance in this film? But did you ever really see him as Harvey Dent if he'd have continued with this series?
That's the thing, they kind of set up Harvey here, and then, in this series, which, Burton verse into the Schumacher verse, we do see Harvey Dent again, but it's, by
Tommy Lee Jones.
Tommy Lee Jones, his name escaped me. Thank you. Yeah. But, basically, like you nailed it. It's just pretty much Billy D. Williams being Billy D. Williams, just kind of walking around smoking some cigars, having a good time.
Yeah, I feel like it was like one of those things where like they didn't necessarily cast for like the
Two-Face. They were just casting Harvey Dent.
Well, yeah, I think they had like, we have a role for Harvey Dent. We have this role, and like, yeah, it's not a lot, but like, can we get a big name? Can we get a recognizable face in here more than like someone that could have really, they weren't really focused on who knew if this was going to get a sequel. It could have bombed.
Yeah, true.
So
yeah.
they're like, let's bring as much legitimacy to this as we can. Let's hire Billy D. Williams. And I mean, for that purposes, like, I'm fine with it. But like, had this continued on, I don't think Billy D. Williams is the actor that I would have seen being able to kind of pull off that duality of
Two-Face. I can definitely see him coming from there, yeah.
I think, some of the comics, I think there was like some Batman 89 like follow-up comics that like actually like saw him as
Two-Face, yeah.
and that kind of stuff. But like, I love Billy D. Williams, but I think this was just a way to kind of, again, like a Jack Nicholson, like bring in
another
people
big name in the movie
that could like legitimize this and add to it. So, which, I'm fine with, because again, this film was a gigantic gamble for Warner Brothers at the time. Michael Gough is Alfred Pennyworth. I'd say he's number 2 on my list of best on-screen Alfreds, tied after Michael Caine. What do you think about Gough's Alfred?
I'm right there with you. I think he is my number 2. I think if you think about a almost comic accurate Alfred, this is him right here, Michael Gough. He's definitely that kind of straight-laced, like prim and proper butler. I always like that scene where Bruce signs that check or whatever, and he turns around and he can't find anywhere to put the pen. He sticks it in that flower, and Alfred's immediately there to pull it out and put it on a little tree.
And then like, he catches the drink glass that's about to fall on the pool table, like the little like following him around gag. Yeah,
he's definitely your manservant's manservant right here. I think Michael Gough does a good job.
Yeah, I think. I think Michael Caine takes my top shot, but just because he's given so much more to do. He's given such great monologues and like great lines in the Dark Knight trilogy. So like, I think that's why it takes. But like, just as like, I think maybe more depicted as he is in the comics, being like that, just the butler and still having a personal connection with Bruce. I think this is more that. So like, I think another fine performance, and I think one of the few mainstays of the Burton to Schumacher era, like Pat Hingle and some of the others that kind of stayed around. So like he got, I think he's probably had the most appearances as Alfred, right? 4 movies out of everybody else.
I would say so.
Michael Caine only had 3. So again, I very much like his performance as well. I think another character that you get in this film that doesn't get so much conversation around is Gotham City itself.
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about Burton's version of Gotham City?
I love it. I really do. Like, I mean, this is the first time where we kind of see Gotham City, at least in, physical type media, movie type media. Because, all the thing we had to go by was, the 66 show, and that was a shot on, like, ran regular city streets, regular backlots. Right. And this,
it's Dean Martin popping out of a window.
Hey, look, Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine seeing him when walking up this wall.
Exactly, that kind of thing.
But it's, like you say, it's very much a character in this movie. It's very, it looks very, neo-Gothic.
Yes.
It looks very claustrophobic in a way. It looks like, you don't want to walk down the wrong back alley because you're just going to die.
Right.
I forget. I think it's maybe Anton First. Correct me if I'm wrong.
First,
I think he had a lot to do with the designs of a lot of the stuff, especially this look of Gotham City. I think he really nailed it. Initially, there's another version of Gotham that I think maybe I like a little bit better. But as far as coming out of the gate in a major motion picture, they captured it perfectly right here off the bat.
Yeah, I really enjoy this version of Gotham City too. I think there's some scenes where like, you're obviously on a Warner Brothers backlot. There's a couple of those, like especially like I think in the meeting, the scene on the courthouse steps, like some of those exterior shots are like a little backlotty, but like the overall look of it, like you get like, I think at the beginning you get like what I would assume is like a matte painting of Gotham, and like some of those street shots really look nice. And I feel like it has a character, and like they tried to take and say this was another character in the film. Like Gotham has to have a style, and it has that Gothic feel, and it has that vibe because it doesn't look just like a normal city. it's not just New York or Chicago like you would get in like, you know, the Nolan trilogy, where it's
Yeah.
like you were just in Chicago and we're not going to dress it up as Gotham really. It's
Right,
just,
yeah.
it's just a city. And like you get, so it's more visually interesting there. And like you said, it kind of evokes that kind of like Gothic feel. And I think no other film other than like one other film, I think really ever paid attention to what Gotham should feel like.
Right.
This one, Returns, and I think the Batman, I
Yeah.
think are the ones that really nailed what Gotham should feel like.
Should feel like. Yeah.
Not full of neon and glow sticks like
Right.
you would get in the Schumacher version. Not that, Todd. So we've talked cast, costume design, makeup design, set design, and some behind the scenes stuff. I think it's time we actually talked about the film story a little bit. Again, I don't want to go through scene to scene, but we'll kind of go through it here. But what do you think the story was, Todd?
So we've got a mysterious 6-foot bat on the rooftops in Gotham City.
Yeah.
Is he real? Is he a hoax? Does he accidentally create his own archenemy, the Joker?
Yeah, who we'll talk about who actually created him. It's a cyclical. It's a circle.
Do we ever
here.
get to have the 200th anniversary festival? Does
Yeah.
Knox ever get his grant?
That mayor is dead set on having that festival, Todd.
Welcome to Batman 89.
Yeah, so again, I don't want to go through scene to scene, so I'm just going to go through some things I like and just some things I want to point out and talk about. If you have some that you want to point out in between or anything like that. Opening title sequence I think is great, kind of like flying through the kind of weathered Batman logo.
Yeah.
I think is great. Let me give Danny Elfman his flowers here, Todd.
Right,
I
right.
shit on that guy a lot of the times when we talk about his music. I'm not a big fan of his. I think he's done some good work. I think he's done a majority of like work that's not for me, that I don't care for.
Yep.
There's no question that his score for this film is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like he really nails the music. You immediately, that Batman march at the beginning of the film, like it just gets you
going.
It gets you amped for it. Like, so like let me please give him his flowers.
Yeah.
And I assume that Batman logo they're flying through, I'm assuming it's like a miniature. I assume.
I would have to say so.
I would say. Again, I think the opening scene is fantastic. After a title sequence, our rooftop robber scene where they're going through the little pile of cash and the American Express card they've got, and then our first kind of sighting of Batman. You don't have to wait long in the film. Like, you get it out of the way. They didn't make you wait 45 minutes to like see Batman and see what he was going to look like. It's like a badass scene, and like it just starts off so strong. Batman not really concerned about returning the money, I guess, though.
Nah.
As much as he is about sending a message.
Yes.
I think the costume design in this movie in general is kind of, it's weird, but I like it. It's like 20s and 30s meets the 80s.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's like you never quite know what era you're supposed to be in. Are we in the 80s? Are we in the 50s? Are we in the early, like, are we in like the late 30s or something?
Right.
Like, you never really know. It's got that kind of a little bit of a timeless quality.
True.
Like
True.
in terms of like, it kind of like evokes the time period where the comics were kind of created, but also kind of melds it with the 80s and the little it's not got so much of an 80s vibe, but 80s technology in a way, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
It's like I just kind of like that vibe to it. What do you think about the Axis Chemical shootout? The creation of the Joker. What do you think about that scene?
I love that scene. I especially love the scene where that guy's running towards camera and Batman just
Yeah, it gives him the straight shot back to the face. Yeah, there's a good part where he's kind of like, Batman is kind of like stalking Napier from like above as he's like running, and Batman's like another level above him. Can't really talk about that scene though. Something I want to bring up. Can't talk about that without talking about. No, I think this is just for the 4K release, or maybe new releases since the 4K.
Okay.
But I know we talked about it at the time that it happened, but the 4K release changes the gunshot sound effects used in the film. What do you think about that?
I think I've watched this movie about 3 times now with the new gunshots, and I miss the old ones.
Yeah, I mean they put them in, I guess, to sound more like the
Accurate.
action little guns, because it was the old school ones. The original sound effects had that like old west shootout, like that kind of stuff to it. And this is more like, 45s and like stuff going off or whatever. And like, I didn't hate it as bad as when I first watched it. I'm like, why the fuck would you do this?
Yeah.
I was very like, what did you do, Lucas? Kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Why would Burton go back and George Lucas's shit? I'm sure he was not involved. I'm sure it was just somebody in Warner Media that was like, hey, why don't we change this film that was fine and put in different gunshot sound effects for no reason? I think the other gunshot sound effects fit better with the style of this film because it has that again, that timelessness, that like, what era are we in? It was more, I don't know, more comic booky to have those like weird, kind of almost out of place old Western sound effects in a way. Like I miss them, and I don't like the new ones as much. I want the old ones back.
There should be an option to still have that track.
Yeah, that's the thing about, like, why don't they ever just give you the option? Like, why don't they give you other audio tracks? Like, why doesn't Star Wars give me the regular versions and the special editions? Why can't I have Batman 89 with a dual audio track? You know, old effects, new effects, that kind of thing.
This is why I still have my physical Blu-ray copy of the Batman 4 film collection.
Yeah,
so I can still hear my pew pew pew.
Yeah, exactly. And again, there's another reason that physical media is still valid. They can't go back and change it once it's printed, baby.
That's right.
It's still in the Access Chemicals. I love the little part where like Batman, he's like finally got his hands on Napier. He's got him by like the scruff, and he's like got him pulled up, and he has to like let him go because Bob the Goon has got Gordon, a gun to Gordon's head, and like that's that little like kind of smirk that he's giving, like that Keaton's doing. It's like a smirk, like, yeah, you think this is it, right, guy? You think this is just gonna get away? It's like a smirk, but it's also like he's also like kind of like seething, with anger a little bit. I always just like love that kind of look on his face. I
also
that was
really
great.
love that part where he's kind of above on those catwalks, and Gordon kind of gets his first look at him, and Commissioner Gordon's like, "Oh my God, it really is a 6-foot man."
Exactly. Going into like, you know, some of the Bruce Wayne scenes, like I think the Pass the Salt scene is great. His first date with Vicky, where they're just like obviously at a room again, like, and I think another kind of something that Michael Keaton added to this, the line about, you know, I've never actually
been in this room before. He kind of
of
looks around like, have I been? I don't think I've actually been in this room.
And it's
before.
like, I think one of the things about this depiction of Bruce Wayne is like, I wonder sometimes, like, was Keaton going for, does this Bruce Wayne, is he that socially awkward, or is that part of the cover?
Right. Yeah.
Which one which do you think it's more of? Do you think he's just like, he is kind of socially awkward just based on like some of the later scenes we get, or do you think it's still maybe in that context was still part of like the cover, and like, this guy can't be Batman because he's like making me sit at a 9-foot table and you know, eat soup.
He kind of almost to me seems like he's maybe more socially awkward than maybe that's more of just part of his, you know, phony Bruce persona. I kind of get the idea he's kind of socially backward.
I think so too. Just because I think the evidence that you would use for that would be like the scene where he tries to tell her and he's so awkward about it.
Yeah, he can't get through it.
He can't really kind of get through it. And I like it too because, like, you know, she kind of, whatever the socially awkward stuff, or like the Bruce Wayne still kind of feels like a front to her because she's like, you know, this house and all this stuff, it really doesn't feel like you. I think that's kind of a great little line, and they have like that little nice little scene where they just go eat at the little kitchen table with Alfred, which is what they should have done all along or whatever. And he's like telling like embarrassing stories about her, or about him, I should say. What did you think about, you know, Bruce bangs Vicky and then hangs upside down like a bat?
Right there on the first date.
On the first date. I mean, yeah, she puts
this
out
was
on
the 80s.
She puts out on the first date, and then once he's all done, he takes to hanging around like a bat in the room.
Maybe he shouldn't have been like actually just hanging upside down like a bat right there in front of her. A little bit too on the nose.
It might be a little bit on the nose, a little bit, Todd. I think another something that Keaton brought up to Tim Burton is like, wouldn't it be interesting if like this guy like did this, if he just hanging around like a bat or whatever? If you're Vicky in that situation, you're like hearing that little that little creak in the corner, and you see this guy hanging upside down, you'd leave, right?
You're like, I slept with this dude.
You nonchalantly get your heels and your purse,
and you're out of there,
and you're sneaking out of that room. In my opinion. You mentioned too before, like the Joker, he takes, I think his name is Antoine, with the hand buzzer, and like electrocutes him.
Oh yeah,
turns him into a smoking skeleton.
Antoine got a little hot.
Under the collar. That I would say is the most, and I have something to kind of follow up. I would think that's the most camp scene in this film.
Really?
If there is a camp, I mean, am I? You think I'm crazy by your
No,
reaction?
I mean, no,
Really?
no,
Really, Cody?
no. No, I mean, I get it. I mean, you can go back and rewatch this, 35 years later now
Right.
almost, and you can see where, maybe Nicholson's kind of leaning more into sort of the campier side of the Joker.
Right.
Maybe unintentionally, it's just the way what he brought to the table, but I can see it. I can see where you're coming from.
I never noticed in the Joker's like weird industrial penthouse of like pipes and stuff and like purple silk, like I don't know, like wall like hangings and like partitions. Like I never noticed he had a dossier for like the nerve gas on the desk. I never noticed that until I just watched it.
Oh,
Like
okay.
he has a little CIA dossier that like for like the nerve gas he would create, I guess from Smilex. Just something I never really noticed.
Okay.
Another part I really love about this film is the action news broadcasts.
Oh, yeah.
It's very RoboCop to me almost.
Right.
Like I guess RoboCop 87, I think.
I think
RoboCop
you're
came
right,
first, and like it just really like the action news broadcast, the little Joker, the new and improved Joker products, like that whole
Right.
like all that stuff. I think, and like
Especially the ones where they realize everything's poison. You see them, they ain't brushed their friggin' hair. That guy's got bumps all over his face.
Yeah, exactly. Like all that stuff is just I just love every bit of the action news broadcast. You get the Flugelheim Museum time.
Yes, the old flug.
Take off of the Guggenheim, obviously. Here's a big question. Here's something I think that divides people, and I think even from what I read, divided Tim Burton at the time was the inclusion of Prince on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
What do you think about it 35 years later? There's only really like, besides maybe a couple instrumental things, there's only like 2 real Prince songs.
Yeah, there's this one and then the one when the parade floats are coming
Yeah.
down the street. Yeah.
What do you think about having a Prince, viewing it 35 years later, what do you think about having that music as well as the score?
I mean, to me, honestly, the Prince stuff was just part of this whole machine back then. It was this whole. I think that album was like through the roof too as well.
Right.
I mean, Prince back then could do no wrong. Did Prince ever do any wrong? I don't know. But it was just part of it. Party Man when they bust into the museum and start messing up the paintings. Of course, you got that that one of those obvious film flubs, the one where the guy goes over that one and puts the handprints on it. Then when you go back, they're dancing again. That picture's fine. It's not been touched.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But the Prince music, I mean, it doesn't detract or take me out of anything. It's just it's part of what makes, I think, Batman 89 Batman 89.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I get people's argument that it like, again, you have that like timelessness of like the design of the film.
Yeah.
And like it dates it to a certain era
That's
because
true,
like
yeah.
Prince music. But like I do not care for that 200th anniversary song like during the parade. I do not like it.
Oh yeah.
I love the Party Man.
The Party Man
I
one.
love that. Like I think Prince is like, in a way, Prince is like one of those like kind of timeless artists in a way, like where his music kind of comes back around to be in vogue no matter what era it's in, you know, even years after his passing. I don't think it detracts at all. Like I think I couldn't imagine it without it. You know
That's
what I
it.
mean?
You
Like,
can't. I can't. That's right. That's a good point. I can't imagine Batman 89 without Prince music.
yeah, like I don't know how you would do that Flugelheim scene without the Party Man
Party
soundtrack.
Man, yeah.
I don't know how that would play if you just had some kind of instrumentals or you just used a random generic instrumental rock song or something. I don't know how it would play.
Makes me think of that. Remember that Bat Dance video where he was like half Joker, half Batman? You ever seen that, Prince? Oh,
No, I don't. It was. I'll have to look that up.
Prince was dressed up as half Joker, half Batman.
Oh Jesus. This was when I was a kid. This was the ultimate fast forward movie for me though, because I would turn it on. I would watch Batman take out the rooftop robbers, and then fast forward to I guess the next
Axis Chemicals.
It's Axis Chemicals. After that, fast forward to his museum entrance,
Right.
Which I think there's maybe one other scene that I would put near the top, but I think the entrance at the museum is probably my favorite scene,
Right.
Just because of like the setup to it, you know, the whole Joker with the getting the water splashed on him, and like it's getting more and more tense. The music's building. You hear that like glass kind of crash,
breaking, yeah,
and then the music kind of like swells, and like you get the great like, you know, the line launcher that he uses to kind of get him out of there. I just think that's like a phenomenal kind of scene. Like I think it's just like it's such a there's a lot of like really good scenes like that to like really add a lot to the character, I think, and that's always one of my favorites. And then it was like from there, let's go to the 200th. You know,
right?
The 200th anniversary of the parade or whatever, and then
a lot of fast forwarding.
It was a lot of fast forwarding when I was.
Where's Batman?
Yeah, it was a lot of fast forwarding when I was a kid. It's like I just want to see the Batman part. It's like, but you know, obviously over the years, I love the rest of it too. But it was the ultimate fast forward movie when it was like when I was a kid when it was on VHS. You know, what else do I got here? I think. Probably right up there with a contender for one of my favorite scenes is driving Vicky back to the cave.
I love it.
That is the look of it, like the atmosphere.
That part of the score that's playing when he's doing it.
The music is perfect. Like, and him just like as it kind of like the music again swells as he's like hammering down that gas
she's
pedal.
getting a little too looky. He's like, let me open this sumbitch up.
let's see what this puppy will do, Phil. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, just the look. It's very like there's like really like again like I don't know the location. I don't know where that was filmed, but there's little like
it looks creepy as fuck.
Yeah, there's little skinny trees and stuff. There's like no leaves on them. Like you know, it's like obviously like kind of like a fall setting. And yeah, just everything about that scene, the atmosphere, the music, I think is perfect. And like going through like the fake wall and like entering the Batcave, like that's always been one of my. That's like when I was watching it again, I rewatched it. Like I watched that scene and I backed up and watched it again before I went on with the movie. Like when I was doing this write up for this stuff. So,
it's amazing.
It is. What do you think about the Batcave design?
Pretty nice. I mean, you don't get a whole lot of it. You just get the main back computer console. You get the little where he drives up on it. I think a lot of that was maybe a matte painting.
There was some, I think had to be, And there
had
was
to
some
be a matte
sets,
painting.
Like some, there was some rock wall sets you can tell are a little. It's a rock wall set, but
for what I mean, obviously what they had to work with back then, I think it's nice. You know, there have been better, more expansive looking, nicer looking Batcaves probably in cinema, but I think for what we get here, I think it suits this movie perfectly.
Yeah, I like the little interaction with him and Vicky, like, you know, where she's talking about like normal people, and it's like what normal people, and like, you know, just him kind of giving her the solution to the Smilex problem and everything.
He gives the whole Dracula.
I was gonna say, do you like the implied sexual assault time? Yeah, something else I want.
Maybe stand in there and get that film.
I'm sure Batsy copped a little feel. I don't know how he got. Did he roofie her back to her house?
Yeah, Batsy, how could you?
How could you, Batsy? One other scene before we get to kind of the ending here that I want to talk about. What are your thoughts now on the Let's Get Nuts scene?
Oh man, you know it was. I'll be honest. It may be a little cringy for me even back then.
Right.
I don't know how much Bruce would played his hand that close to the Joker. You know, like letting him know he could, you know, be that potentially a threat to him.
Right.
But you know, I guess he was thinking, you know, he maybe has to save himself and Vicky at this moment. I don't know if he thought that maybe both their lives were threatened, but it's part of this thing. It's, you know, that you want to get nuts. That's kind of it's kind of outgrown the movie in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it's one of those things that I always, even back in the day, I was like, I don't know if Bruce Wayne would have done something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's trying to draw the Joker into shooting him, but like I feel like going that aggressive about it, like why you kind of run the risk he just shoots you in the head. Yeah. Luckily, Joker pulls out the smallest gun ever to shoot into that
Didn't cap him in the dome.
Yeah, into that little silver platter or whatever. But yeah, it has its life of its own. Like it is a little much for this film. It kind of comes out of nowhere a little bit. Yeah. That leads into something though, kind of I guess controversial at the time. I think some people still, again, in a, you know, kind of view it one way or the other, kind of maybe still a little divided on it, but that sets up the line of the Joker being like, have you ever danced with the devil in pale moonlight? You see Bruce being like, what you seems familiar to him. So, you know, it was written into the story. Basically, the Joker, Jack Napier, is a younger man, basically created Bruce Wayne as Batman, created his turn as Batman by killing his parents. It's kind of revealed that Jack Napier killed his parents when he was young. What do you think about that? The Joker creating Batman, Batman creating the Joker. What do you think about that element?
I think as far as just the parameters of this film go, I think it works here. It's something I'm definitely glad that I didn't adopt into the comics or anything else, but I think it works here. And there's also something that was always interesting to me earlier when they have their cathedral showdown where he's like, you killed my parents. I created you. You created me first kind of thing. And the Joker's like, I was just a kid when I killed your parents. So does he know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? It don't really matter because in a few more minutes he's going to be dead on the pavement.
Right.
So, it's kind of, they've kind of broke that a little bit. But, this was still a time in definitely superhero cinema where comic book continuity and comic book Bible stuff, you can't do that, was still a little bit of a gray area. And I think as far as, like I say, the parameters of this movie, I think it was okay. It's just something I'm glad it didn't stick into other media.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the best way to put it. I'm all right with it in the context of this because it's like kind of its own self-contained thing, and the Joker's not coming back, obviously, after this film, so it's kind of a one-off situation anyway. But, yeah, I would rather it – I think it holds more weight, honestly, if it was a random act of violence, like more than it is tied to, like, one particular villain.
That's true.
I think it works better in the narrative of Batman if it's a random act of violence that spurs Batman's creation, not a specific villain. And there seems like there's some catharsis in that after you've, like, taken out the villain that killed your parents. Like, do you have the same drive to be Batman? Because it was this, one guy that you found, not like a guy you never really knew about or
That's true
never
too,
saw again, and it was just a random act of Gotham Street violence. Like, I think it, once you've, like, taken that person out, do you have the same drive to put on the costume every night?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I've took out the guy that caused all this. I've got this hot photojournalist I'm dating.
Yeah,
why am I doing
why
this?
Why am I going out every night? And, why don't I just donate to the Gotham City Police Force and let them deal with it? Another great kind of scene and little line, obviously something also people like have had, kind of a little bit divisive. Alfred lets Vicky into the cave.
Oh, yeah.
Just completely violating that trust there.
Bruce is down there just getting, ready for his confrontation with the Joker. And hello, Vicky Vale's in there.
They should have put in a scene like the next morning where like Alfred's got a little box and he's like getting his shit. He's just like
putting his belongings.
He's packing his little trunk and leaving like, trying to apologize. I just the thing about it, like I love obviously the suit up scene, but I just love the line where like Vicky's like, we're gonna try to love each other, and he's like, I'd like to, but he's like, but he's out there right now, and I got to go to work.
Yeah,
I've always loved that line, and just like going into like changing into the suit, like I've always thought that was like a badass moment.
Yeah, and it kind of plays back to when he was trying to tell her who he was, and he's like, stammering over that. You know how a normal person has a job,
you get up, you go to
eat
work,
down,
you brush
eat
your
breakfast.
teeth. Yeah.
Well, here's my job, honey. I got to go to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm just like, fanboying with some of this. I'm almost to the end of my little notes here. I just had a note about we get to the Gotham City celebration, the parade. I love how Knox thought how was he fine with just a dust mask?
Out of his trunk?
Out of his trunk. Like you see before, like Jokers give Vicky like it's really
a real gas
mask. And this dude, you telling me he was just fine with a little dust mask running around with his little baseball bat, his little Louisville Slugger. So
taking some chances.
That's a little hand wavy kind of stuff there. Obviously, we get the Batwing in this film, which was a cool inclusion. Yeah. Batwing versus Joker. Batwing's mini bullets that doesn't take out the Joker versus the Joker's one bullet that takes out the Batwing
with the long ass barrel.
I like that scene too because people talk about like, I don't know, like was Batman trying to kill the Joker? Was he not? Did he intentionally miss? Was he trying to? I mean, Batman does kill in this film. Like, let's not overlook that. He definitely, when he destroys Axis Chemicals, he blows up like 5 dudes there.
That's right.
Like he definitely kills in this film. And I mean, like, do I like my Batman to kill? Not necessarily. I like him to try to avoid it as much as possible. Does it bother me in the context of this film? No.
Absolutely not.
No, it doesn't bother me like it does in something like Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Where it's he seems so bloodthirsty. Yeah. Like he seems like he's like rock hard from killing. Like that's how that Batman seems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the little The Batwing scene. I love the Joker's line too. He's like, "Come on, you gruesome son of a bitch."
Yeah, I was just going to mention that.
Yeah,
I
like,
love
you know,
it.
I love that.
it.
It's very kind of like almost like years later you kind of see the Dark Knight. That kind of hit me kind of thing with Heath Ledger.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of that scene in that film kind of evokes this to me. I think the Gotham City I can't talk, Todd. The Gotham City Cathedral. I think that's such a great kind of setting for the ending of the film.
I love
it's like
it.
a very gothic kind of setting for the ending of the film. It just feels very Burtonish, and like the climb there. I assume that the goons had to have already been there.
I believe that they were already stationed there.
Yeah, you gotta wave your hand a little bit.
Don't look over here a little bit.
Yeah, to assume that those those goons were already stationed, that he had it planned out that he was gonna evac from the cathedral. But yeah, everything in the cathedral, I think it's a great ending. I love where Batman just sucker punches the Joker at the end.
I love the line where the Joker's like, "It can truly be said that I have a bat in my belfry."
My belfry. And then a dude jumps through the floor.
Yeah.
What did you think about Batman's? I had to look it up to see what it was technically called. Batman's arm extension, because the dude has knife legs.
Those knife legs, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I mean, I'm not going to say the best bat gadget we ever saw, but
I wouldn't die on that hill.
It was a nice little, okay, maybe it didn't quite work.
No, I mean, like, I wouldn't die on the hill of it being the best, but I mean, like, it's different. It's very instant specific. It's very James Bond.
It's
instant
very
specific. Like,
I've got
Master
this extendo arm thing here.
Master Wayne, be sure to take your extension arm in case some man comes at you with knife legs. You know what I mean?
It's very on
good
the nose,
idea,
yeah.
Alfred. You can stay. I know you let Vicky in. Put your little box down.
Yeah. Put the box
Thanks
down.
for the tip. You can stay a little while longer, old man. A little hand wavy with some of the goons and stuff being there, but I love it. Obviously, everybody knows how the Joker dies here, and I think all that stuff is great with the little bolo gun tying him to the gargoyle.
Yeah.
Where do you get that? Where do you get that fake hand from, though? Or was it, hey, let me give you a hand?
Yeah, I know.
Where do you get that fake hand?
Did he have that thing the whole time? I don't. How does he have time to switch that fake hand on?
I know. It's
a little bit.
It's a little hand wavy, but like
little.
it's still it works, and it is just part of the film, and like I think it still. Excuse me, I think it still works. Last thing I've got here is I love the Harvey Dent reading the note, like, Gotham City has earned a rest from crime, should crime cast a shadow over the heart of the city, give us the signal, all that, and just that like that slow moving up the buildings to that last
with
shot.
That swelling type music.
Yeah.
Yes.
That shot I think is probably one of the most lasting and iconic shots of all of Batman on film.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, again, you make a compilation of Batman stuff, that shot's in there.
That's
it's probably
in
your
there.
last shot of your video.
Yeah.
You're fading out with that music. Let me get this your perspective. We kind of talked about it a little bit more, Todd, or a little bit before, I should say. I think we both agree this is a darker Batman film.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, this is the first real Batman film. Batman 66 had a movie, technically. But so if you want to say it's the second Batman film besides the serials of like the 30s and 40s, this was a darker film. I think it's definitely more tailored to a mature audience. I think at the time it was tailored to that, like, teenage, mid-teens to 30-some, it's the 18 to 34 demographic is what it was really tailored to. Viewing the film today, though, is it camp? Is it still campy? If you view it in the lens of everything today and, like, looking back on it, like, would you consider it camp in its own way? Maybe differently than the 66 film, but...
Yeah, I think, if you're definitely talking camp, you're talking very different types of camp.
Yeah.
66 is definitely it's campy. And
Yeah.
so I love Batman 66. That's why I'm sitting here today, more than likely.
Right.
But you...
That's what he means, folks.
Oh, Lord. But I think you can definitely go back and maybe look at some elements of this film, particularly in Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker. Maybe it's a little bit hammy, a little bit over the top, borderline what you would say campy. But
Right.
I think overall, tonally, though, I still kind of see this as a serious film. It's not, maybe as serious or as dark as maybe some other Batman films we have gotten since this one. But I don't look at this as just, pure camp.
Right.
I can see some camp elements maybe 35 years later maybe have creeped in. think that could be, looked at that way, but I don't really think of it as camp per se.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a film that has camp elements. I don't think it's made to be camp. And I think I've heard people say like the first Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, was like the truest depiction of a comic book on screen. I think this was before that. Like, I think it really feels like it really evokes like a comic with the set design. And like, if you just look at the Axis chemicals, like there's that part where Napier is going and like he's turning wheels, pulling levers.
Yeah.
There's like fucking printing things that's coming out of the machine, like papers being printed out of the machine. It's like this big, like it's almost out of like a 50s horror movie, or like one of the old Flash Gordon serials where you see like the evil guy's lair and he's got a big looking computer, what they thought a computer would look like in the 1940s. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it has that like almost, again, it has a timeless quality, but it has like a comic book design. It has like very like comic booky elements. And I think before you get to something like Spider-Man, I think this is more like the closest you come to seeing of like a comic book, like kind of adapted to the screen with like
I would agree,
the way it's kind of designed and kind of set up and the look of it. It has a very comic booky feel and like a very like, again, that 30s to 50s era of like a little bit sci-fi, a little bit serials, a little bit Flash Gordon, a little bit all that kind of stuff. And I think it all works, but there's definitely still a little camp elements. I would not go to so far as to call this film campy though. We know books like The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, The Killing Joke, they kind of changed the general public's view on the Batman character leading up to this film. What do you think the lasting impact that this film has had on cinema and Batman as a whole all these years later? What's that impact?
I think cinema-wise, if you kind of go back to where we are in this point in time, this is 1989. At this point, we've only had 4 Superman movies, and those started out. Superman 1, great. Superman 2, still very good. 3, 4, oh Lord, So, and this movie was a big ass gamble. This was a big ass gamble for Warner Brothers. It was Tim Burton all involved.
He was not a director that had like didn't have this long list of films.
I think he was coming off that one Pee Wee Herman movie and Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of it was almost like, catching like lightning in a bottle. Yeah. You had this up and coming director that they thought could handle this thing. He had this guy he had worked with before that he thought would be perfect as Batman, Bruce Wayne, Michael Keaton. Right. You go out and get your big name that you think can really pull this Joker character home, Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, get your movie funded too.
Right,
probably.
Yeah. Get maybe some stuff and, some people on board that maybe wouldn't have been on board if without that big name. Right. And it just, like we've, you can go back and look at it in history. It took off. It just blew up. It was like the event of 1989 was this movie. And I think that kind of showed Hollywood that, superhero movies as a whole, done properly, with the right direction, right story, right actors, right cast, could be things like this, which led us on into Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and, the X-Men's, the Blades. Right. That's how we get the ball rolling. Yeah. As far as, I think the bigger impact is Batman as a character, because if you go back to, as we've kind of alluded to, in comics, right after the 66 series ended, the comics pretty much shifted back to darker stuff. You had Neil Adams, you had Denny O'Neil come on board. The comics during that show kind of adapted what the show was doing, but once that show ended, they reverted back pretty quick. Right. And we got the more darker take on Batman, which brought us on into the early 80s. After they left the title, kind of mixed results, I'd say. But even with, The Dark Knight Rises and Year One and Killing Joke, that's still, by and large, mostly a comic book reading audience. It was getting outside of that buzz, but then this hit. And I can still remember, like, media stuff leading up to this movie, and then we're talking about it, and it was still like, with a biff bam pow, like, biff bam pow, Batman's getting ready to have a new movie, folks. Right. And it would have the 66 music track over it. But then this came out, and that, I love Batman 66, don't get me wrong, that blew all of that away. Yeah. And it set up Batman as the Dark Knight. Yeah. We had the Dark Knight, in media that a lot of general population hadn't seen before. And if you think about it, Batman put his foot on the gas, and he's never really looked back since this movie came out.
Still, I think DC's most successful character. Obviously, he's still, the flagship. He's still, you've got to put him in every movie as much as possible, like, you know, in terms of like what they were doing with the DCEU and stuff. Yeah. I think, you know, would Batman's, if there was never a Batman 89, would Batman have gotten to be as popular as he is? Like, this brought it brought a new film going audience, something they'd never seen. And it also brought, you know, it brought to life what people were reading in the comics. And I'm sure it brought a lot of people to the comics that would have probably never picked up a Batman comic because they're like, oh, this is just campy bullshit for kids.
And they got to get in on this, like Dark Knight Rises and Killing Joke and Year One, and they got in on the good stuff.
yeah, like they got to get on the ground floor of it as kind of like as it was hitting its peak, and maybe you know, maybe never got to the same levels as around this time. But yeah, I think you can't really understate the impact that it had on comic book films. Obviously, there was films before this. There was the Superman franchise, but this was taking a character that wasn't. It's easier to depict on screen someone that's like happy and, you know, is all powerful, and that can fly around and do all this stuff. And there's, you know, that kind of stuff. But take a dark, brooding character whose parents were murdered, and a darker story, and like make it work on screen visually, and then make it work from a story perspective, and have it be successful. Like, I think it showed you that comic book films could be more than just campy Saturday morning stuff. Like, it kind of, the audience grew up. The film started to grow up, and that opened the door for, I think, everything else that would kind of come after this. If the Donner of Superman's kind of kicked the door open, it may have, like, the door may have come back a little bit closed in the intervening years from the 70s to the end of 89, but Batman just, like, the door went off the hinges.
Right.
It was kicked off the hinges when this movie was released, I think. And again, I think the impact cannot be not be overstated.
No.
Todd, we could probably talk about this film all day. We're an hour into this already.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and give our review. So, Todd, give me your review, score, and final thoughts for Batman 89.
Man, I love this movie. I still love it as much today as I did 35 years ago. Is it perfect? No. Unfortunately, you know, when we all start to get a little older, we start aging. Our imperfections show a little bit more.
Right.
We start to look a bit rough around the edges. But Batman, to me, 89 is still a great film. I think it's mandatory for any Batman fans in the movie library, physical and digital.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's still a visual stunner. I think it's a thrill ride of a movie. I give Batman 89 an 8, which on our scale is great.
Yeah, I completely back all that up. I'm going to go in with an 8 as well. I think this is a great film. It is a mandatory watching for any Batman fan. If you have like young kids and you want to get them in the comic books, you know, of a certain age, you know, it can be a little bit too much here for young kids, you know, obviously, and especially when you get into Batman Returns, Todd.
Oh, yeah.
Which, if we ever talk about that.
That's full Burton, baby.
Yeah, full Burton. But yeah, this is definitely one of those, like when you have like, you know, an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid that's interested in comic book films and they like the character Batman. This is like, you know, this is what you show them. Like, this is the character. This is what comic book films can offer you, and comic books in general can offer you. And I think, like you said, the cracks show a little bit. There's a little bit of hand wavy stuff, and it's not, after 35 years, it's not the most polished thing ever. Some of the effects can be a little. Some of them look fantastic, and some of them have not aged as well as the others. But like, as far as performances, as far as, you know, I mentioned Jack legitimized the film. I think the film in itself legitimized comic book films in general.
Definitely.
Even more so than anything else that had come before. And I think for that reason, I think it's a great film overall, Todd.
Yeah.
I think we'll call it a wrap for this episode, Todd. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to send us an email or get in touch with us on social media. Towel Capes will return. We want to thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye, guys.
See ya.